everyone, happy Wednesday. It's Alysia Silberg here, and I'm excited to be joined by Christian Meyers, my partner at Street Global Venture Capital, for the special edition of our weekly Entrepreneur Wednesdays Global Fireside Chat. Today, we'd like to welcome you to our discussion on health technology and healthcare innovation, a domain where companies are working on breakthrough treatments, delivery systems, and improved operating models. Personal and public health may have once been a topic for industry specialists, but today individuals, families, local communities, companies, and governments are keenly aware of how the state of healthcare and their healthcare environment affects them. Health innovation is an area I'm particularly inspired by because while growing up in Africa and traveling the world, I've seen the often devastating social, economic, and human implications of uneven and unavailable healthcare, both in the developing and developed worlds. Recently, I've been inspired by the startup teams I've seen working to change this by making diagnostics, therapies, and healthcare infrastructure more accessible. Commercializing and deploying innovations, especially given financial considerations, will be another critical part of this process. These are the topics of today's Fireside Chats. Because whatever our roles as citizens, government leaders, business people, scientists, and financial markets people, healthcare will play a defining role in shaping our societies, daily human experiences, and economies. We are here today to understand more and how we can become better informed participants in this very important conversation and effort. I'm broadcasting to you live from the United Kingdom, home to academic research institutions devoted to improving health, an open national health system, and cutting-edge research in life sciences, engineering, and technology, elements that combine to support health innovation. I'm grateful to be joined by some incredibly special entrepreneurs, investors, government leaders, and organizational leaders working with health technology and innovation who are taking time to share their valuable insights so we can learn from them. For those of you who don't know, our topic for today is health tech and health innovation, new innovation, shifting boundaries, and changing world health. Now I've got you all excited. Let me go ahead and introduce you to our VIP guests before asking them to properly introduce themselves to you. Welcome to Bangalore, India-based Ashwin Raghumaran, who is a venture capitalist and entrepreneurship ecosystem builder. Delhi, India-based Arun Srivastava, who's an investment banker and healthcare technology expert. California-based David Green, who's a venture capitalist and pharma executive. Shanghai, China-based Andre Schutt, who's an investor and healthcare specialist. London, UK-based Stephen Michael Winmore, who's an investor and global business leader. Florida, USA-based Michael Fenn, who's a mentor, consultant, and champion for entrepreneurship. And welcome to my co-host, Christian Meyers. Now, I know you'd like to meet all of them, so let me ask them to go ahead and properly introduce themselves to you, starting with Ashwin. Ashwin, please say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Alysia, for that brief introduction. My name is Ashwin, and I manage an early-stage venture capital fund out of Bangalore in India called the Bharat Innovation Fund. We invest in deep tech startups, and healthcare is one focus area. I've already invested in a couple of startups, which one called Mitra BioTech in the personalized cancer space, which has gone on to raise about $30 million or so from marquee investors in the US, and another one called Consure Medical, which is in the medical device space, which has also gone on to raise about $10 million or so. And our focus currently is on medtech or in the medtech space in India in globally competitive startups.
Thank you, Ashwin. Very excited that you're joining us today. David, please say hi to everyone.
Hey, good day to everyone across the world. My name is David Green. I'm a registered investment banker, managing director and partner at Objective Capital Partners. We are a M&A advisory investment banking firm, and I focus specifically on life science clients. I have over 25 years of life science R&D and corporate development transactional experience in pharma, biotech, medtech, where I'm responsible for leading mergers, acquisitions, licensing, collaborations, and establishing corporate strategy. Look forward to participating.
Very excited to have you join us today, David. Thank you. Andre, please say hi to everyone.
Yeah, hello. Hi, everyone. This is Andre Schutt, calling you from the beautiful Bangkok in Thailand. Well, it's a great pleasure to participating in this fireside chat session today. A few words about myself, originally being from Germany, but having lived pretty much around the world in the UK, Brazil, Singapore, and in the past few years in China, helping to build businesses as a consultant as well as an investor. Now I'm part of a group called BHG. We are the Borderless Healthcare Group. which is a very strategic investment company whereby we own our own healthcare ecosystem, consisting about 20 plus companies in healthcare TMT, so which includes technology, media, and telecommunication. Headquartered pretty much in Shanghai, where we operate our Borderless Innovation Center, which is interactive smart home, smart health experience center. So we are pretty much focusing on the consumer-centric side of healthcare, dealing with the consumers in the home or in the communities, with a very strong focus on Asia, in particular China.
Welcome, very excited to have you join us. Stephen, please say hi.
Hi everybody, this is Steve Windmill, calling from the not very sunny Cotswolds in England. A little bit about me. I am an ex-soldier. I was previously a colonel. I've spent time as a consultant, and I've spent quite a lot of time as a troubleshooter, resolving problems that other people have failed to resolve. My claim to fame is that I planned and led the largest single change program here in the United Kingdom, at 18 billion pounds sterling. And I'm currently a modest investor in about 5 separate businesses.
Welcome, Stephen. Very excited you're joining us. Michael, please say hi to everyone.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm an assistant professor of biomedical engineering here in Florida, the Sunshine State. It's beautiful here today. I am happy to be joining you. And just a little bit about myself. I'm not only an assistant professor, but I'm really keen on bridging the gap between academia and entrepreneurship in the venture world. I have a startup consulting firm and do a great deal of early stage startup consulting. I sit on the board of a number of startups, life science startups, particularly in oncology, as well as advanced biomaterials and diagnostics. I also work with Tech Capital, Spectrum Capital as science advisors, and currently I'm an ambassador for a very interesting program called the Center for Advancing Innovations via their Virtual Accelerator program, which is a partnership with the NIH, MedImmune, and several others that's backed with a $50 million fund. In addition to that, I've worked with a number of startups that have gone on to be quite successful that have launched out of my lab. And I look forward to participating in this and learning more about everyone else.
Thank you, Michael. Very excited you joining us as well. And my co-host today, Christian Meyers. Please say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Alysia, for having me. My name is Christian Meyers. I'm based in San Francisco. I'm a seed stage technology investor, investing alongside Alysia in startups addressing very large markets and global challenges, including challenges in the health space. And we are proud to work with founders who are helping advance things in gene therapies, sensory enhancement, blood testing, antitoxin development, software for improving the performance of hospital care, and preventative diagnostics. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Christian. Just before we jump into our questions for our VIP guests, a few important shout outs. On the screen are contact details for our panelists. Feel free to reach out to them. You know, you can always find us at inspireme@onlinefiresidechat.com. We'll do our very best to make sure your questions always get answered. Just a reminder, we have community champions and ever-growing meetup groups in over 80 cities in 65 countries around the world, including in North and South America, the UK, Europe, Africa, the Middle East, India, Asia, and Australia. If you'd like to meet up with one of your local chapters, you'd like to start your own, feel free to reach out to us and we'll do our best to connect you. Thank you again to all our volunteer champions from around the globe. We say this to you twice a week, but you are the heart and soul of our community, and we wouldn't be here with entrepreneurs in more than 100 countries, and we know that together we can all make this happen. Thank you again to our VIPs for joining us today. We're extremely excited to be hosting you. Thank you to all the presidents, prime ministers, members of parliament, ambassadors, government ministries, UN offices, World Economic Forum, US Embassy Corners, British Council offices, university campuses, schools, business incubators, Chamber of Commerces, and all the radio stations for all your weekly support and for raising awareness within your regions and communities. Thank you again to our UN Women team for all the support you provide us as well. Once again, we are hosting and sharing our content on news radio stations around the globe today. So thank you to everyone. If you'd like us to broadcast from a radio station near you, make sure to reach out to us so you get to learn from experts such as the ones we're hosting today. Now you want to learn from the best and they're joining us. Just to make sure our VIPs are extra comfortable, our topic for today is health tech and health innovation. new innovations, shifting boundaries, and changing world health. We're going to ask our panelists to give us their insights. We always like to learn from them, so feel free to be 100% honest. We're going to start off with a nice, easy question, and we are going to be posing it to Ashwin. Michael, we'd also love your thoughts on this question, but of course, we'd like to learn from our whole panel today, so if any of our other panelists want to share your insights, please feel free to. So Ashwin, the first question goes as follows. What are some of the life sciences and computing technologies that are changing healthcare that you'd like to tell us about today? Please go for it, Ashwin.
Sure. Let me answer that question by talking about 2 or 3 trends that I'm seeing in healthcare and we are looking at as being the future of healthcare, at least from an investment perspective into startups. The first is we believe that healthcare intervention in the progress of a disease is going to happen a lot earlier than it did in the past. And that is going to go even further and move into the wellness mode. So if you want to really diagnose as well as treat earlier, a lot of this is going to be enabled through artificial intelligence and the availability of a significant amount of data and the capability to process that data. What this data and some of the artificial intelligence techniques are also going to enable is the ability to deliver more personalized treatment, either in terms of diagnosis or even in terms of treatment. And we are seeing this in areas like cancer and so on and so forth, where the individual is treated based on their condition, their body type, and so on and so forth. The third broad trend, which I think is going to come a little bit more from the life science aspect or life science technology aspect, is that we are going to slowly become better at isolating single cells and then manipulating them. And that is going to be able to provide treatment, therefore, to patients, even at a cellular level, identify what is happening as far as a disease is happening at a cellular level. And that could result in significant progress in treatment as well.
Thank you, Ashwin, for starting us off today. Michael, we'd love to hear your thoughts here too. Please go for it.
So I'd like to kind of follow on to what Ashwin just said, actually, particularly the latter part there. The Human Cell Atlas, which is an initiative by the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, I think is going to play a major role in this, which is similar to the Human Genome Atlas, but where they're mapping every cell in the human body. So I think that along with the significant role that data collection and singular cellular analysis that this particular initiative is participating in and performing, along with other similar like initiatives, I think that's going to make substantial changes. I think these types of atlases, or let's say just large data libraries, will really help us move away from this kind of homogeneous one-size-fits-all medicine, conventional medicine that we practice today, and move to a much more personalized medicine. I think we're going to be seeing this, we're already seeing this today. With some therapies, with companion diagnostics, etc. But we're going to see a much more data-driven approach from the physicians, the EMR systems, and all the way to the assays, the histopathology, etc., which will eventually all be integrated into one, where we'll have medical imaging data from the patient data, EMR data, any of the blood work, assays, etc. And then also all of the data from the other patient populations, which we can bring together as these heterogeneous data sets using deep learning, feature extraction, and feature selection analysis methods. And now with our ability to use quantum computing, I really think we're going to see a significant, this is an exponential that I think we're going to really truly see extreme exponential growth here in the next 10 years.
Thank you, Michael. Moving on to our next question, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, David, and then Stephen would also love to hear from you. Your co-panelists, Ashwin and Michael, have touched on some very interesting life sciences, computer technologies, changing healthcare. We'd love to hear from you, your thoughts in terms of the changing face of healthcare. David, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. And I would agree with some of the preliminary comments by Ashwin, by Michael, and I'll give you one example in terms of what Michael just referred to, integrated systems. I'm currently trying to, I'm looking at either investing and or trying to sell certain diagnostic systems that are monitoring either diabetes or obesity in these continuous monitoring systems. And really the true transformation of these technologies will be built on what Michael was just referring to about integrated systems. And so that's going to be really a key success factor moving forward, which will transform a lot of what healthcare is doing in terms of personalized treatment and integrating these into individualized systems. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Stephen, of course, we'd love to hear from you. Please go ahead.
Well, a couple of thoughts come to mind. A few months ago, I was in a conversation with somebody about artificial intelligence and the medical profession. And the conversation came around to a trial, which I think was at Oxford University. I could be wrong there, but they trialed an artificial intelligent doctor with real life patients. And the accuracy was very high, but the patients themselves actually were very uncomfortable to the point of distrusting the computerized system and preferring to be diagnosed by a person, even though we know that doctors are only right about 60–70% of the time at best. So I think whilst I've got absolutely no doubt at all that the technology will arrive to enable us to do some fairly wondrous things, I do wonder about people's acceptance of it, at least for a generation or two. And I've got no particular answer to that.
Thank you, Stephen. Our next question goes to you, Andre, and David and Stephen have also touched on some very interesting points. You're based in a very exciting part of the world when it comes to healthcare. What revolutionary changes do you see on the horizon when it comes to health and health technology that many people may not be aware of? Please go ahead.
Thanks, Alysia. Well, being based in China and having seen the tremendous changes in the past couple of years, not only in healthcare, but in terms of innovation. So there are definitely a couple of points that I would like to share. I think China is a very interesting place where we currently see two big phenomena, where we are dealing with the silver tsunami of a huge aging population of about 250 million people, and this number is going to double in the next 30 years. At the same time, we are actually experiencing a baby boom of having about 90 million couples are trying to have a second baby. China just announced a second child policy about 18 months ago. So we are going to deal with a huge baby boom at the same time. On the flip side, there are obviously not enough hospitals, not enough doctors. China never introduced a family physician like a GP system, which means that people go straight into tertiary hospitals even if they just have a cold. So the system seems to be quite inefficient and congested at times. Similarly, there's no allied health available, no physio. So about 2 years ago, the government actually announced a huge change towards aging in place. So the government has realized that there's not enough capacity. We are seeing actually globally that there's a lot of system failures appearing, whereby we can't just spend more money on building new hospitals, educating more doctors, because there are not enough workforce available. So China basically then announced that the core focus is going to be on aging in place. Percent of the whole population will have at home or in an elderly home. This then obviously comes with the question: how is the society going to deal with this problem? Because there are not enough caregivers, or China never had a caregiving system as what we know from the US or Europe. So this causes a lot of problem that the government doesn't know how to tackle, and hence needs to basically create a framework of innovation which is able to basically address this problem of people aging in place or aging at home, and not going to the traditional hospital, whereby there's no longer enough resources available.
Thank you, Andre. And I know some of your co-panelists have got some insights they'd like to share with us in terms of what you've been saying. So we'd love to hear from Ashwin, David, Michael, and then Christian to summarize for our community. Ashwin, please go ahead and share your thoughts here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I'd just like to take this back to a very important point that Stephen made. which is that it will take a couple of generations for mindsets to shift to accepting, let's assume, computer-driven or artificial intelligence-driven treatment. And the way I see this evolving is that a lot of these systems or AI systems are really going to be more of decision support systems to start with for doctors. And the doctor is going to eventually be the one who's going to be the face and actually treating the patient. So there's going to be that comfort level. And perhaps over a period of time and generations, as Stephen pointed out, this could move towards patients being more comfortable with getting diagnosis and an entirely artificial system, as opposed to having a human being in front of them treating or diagnosing them. So I believe it's going to be a lot more of a doctor assist system to start with before it becomes technical.
Thank you, Ashwin. David, please share your thoughts.
Yes, this is to build on Andre and Ashwin. You know, where we're seeing the demographics across the world, this is not Asia Pacific, Japan in particular, but also in the United States and in Europe, where, you know, the demographics are showing that it's an aging population. And where we're seeing a lot of interest is investing and developing technologies that are going to be targeted towards the aging population in areas such as ocular disorders, things like macular degeneration, things like dementia and Alzheimer's, and then looking at, you know, just various healthcare technologies that are going to be dealing with the problems in some of the healthcare systems, in particular in the United States, where we're dealing with, you know, very large Medicare population. So that's where I see a lot of investments and a lot of technologies popping up. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Michael, please go ahead.
Yes, I completely agree with David on that. The aging population, which is only going to continue to rise, and being here in the state of Florida in particular, which has the largest aging population and or growth of aging population, as many of the baby boomers are retiring and moving here to Florida, it's only going to continue to become a greater and greater problem. And it's a multifaceted, multivariate type of problem that has many challenges associated with it. And I think that there are going to be many investment opportunities. And I think it'll also bring about a lot of innovation that will continue to flow on into even the millennial generation, which I am on the tail end of. Which will actually be a larger aging population than even the baby boomer population. So this is going to continue to be a trend and a challenge if it's not addressed now. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to address these challenges, particularly from the healthcare delivery side, and also really from patient compliance, which is one of the biggest issues, particularly with patient aging or elderly patients, is having them comply, particularly such as with pharmaceutical regimens, et cetera. So I think there's a great deal of potential there for investment opportunities as well as technology innovations.
Thank you, Michael. And Christian, we'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of all the fascinating insights being shared today. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Alysia. Well, to recap some of what's been said regarding technologies that are driving breakthroughs in innovation and delivery, one of the things that we're seeing in Silicon Valley is a renaissance in health technology startups being developed. And that's a confluence of the things that the panelists have been describing. There are new life sciences technologies, such as gene editing capabilities, combined with hard technology, hard computing technology in the areas of data and analytics, and then changing economics that are making those two tools, which are the inputs to a business, bringing down the cost of starting a business and developing novel diagnostics or novel treatments or novel delivery methods. All of that's coming together to make it attractive for entrepreneurs to start health tech companies and for investors to inject capital into this area. For a while, investors have been cautious because the traditional notion of investing in life sciences companies developing drugs seemed much harder than working in other domains such as software or computing infrastructure. But with those changing economics and new tools, investors are excitedly re-entering the market. And the panelists talk a lot about data. And I think for the audience, it's important to understand the big breakthrough there is when we would go see a physician, we were often relying on their memories and the data sets in their heads, or maybe combined with their colleagues. But today we have computing systems that have harvested and contain very large data sets that allow computers and computer software to analyze whether or not something such as a skin lesion is actually cancerous, or whether some patient set in a hospital organization is at risk for certain transmissible diseases. And that's the exciting part about data. And the exciting part about artificial intelligence is that we're talking about software that can see patterns and draw conclusions that humans couldn't, and human programmers couldn't devise the software that's actually detecting those patterns. The software is learning on its own, and that's called machine learning. And so those are some of the exciting areas. We're seeing breakthroughs in diagnostics and therapeutics, but as the panelists have said, there's a whole other mission to bringing this to market, to addressing different population sets and making it accessible and ensuring that patients actually use these advantages. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. Moving on to our next question, we'd love to hear from Ashwin and David. We've been talking about some very interesting things in our show today, and we'd love for you to touch on some of the business models and financial systems that you've seen changing global healthcare. Starting with you, Ashwin, please go ahead.
Sure. Let me talk about what I think, at least from a service delivery model, is really going to change healthcare. We spoke about two things, right? We spoke about the aging population, which is really, has challenge in accessing healthcare in terms of their capability to go in and withstand time spent in hospitals. The other part of it is, especially in countries like India, there's a fairly significant population, and serving those populations is becoming difficult by setting up standalone hospitals.
Please go ahead, David.
Yeah, what I was going to say was I was going to take it in a little bit of different direction in terms of how pharma, biotech, the life sciences industries changing, or at least approaching some of the changes in trying to address innovative medicines, a little bit touching upon your point. And it's this point of organic growth, how they're approaching the business versus inorganic growth. And where I'm spending a lot of my waking hours is on helping large companies as well as small companies grow through either like an inorganic growth. So buying technologies, buying companies to meet expectations of the public markets. And you not only have to focus on your organic growth, but looking at inorganic growth as ways of adjusting your business model to meet the needs and the demands of the global population. Thank you.
Ashwin, please go for it.
I was talking about a service delivery model innovation, where I believe that a lot of healthcare delivery is going to start happening at home now. And that's going to lead to a significant ecosystem change, because you're going to require now medical devices that can go into the home, which can be affordable. And it's also going to lead to a set of entirely new thinking in terms of who will actually provide that care at home, whether it's a motivated family member or somebody with basic training and skills, but who can actually go into the home and deliver healthcare, as opposed to patients walking into hospitals and having to be treated there.
Thank you, Ashwin. Moving on to our next question. It's a very popular question, and this question goes to David and Stephen. We'd love to hear from you. David, what are some of the biggest opportunities you're seeing for innovation and entrepreneurship when it comes to healthcare globally? Please go ahead.
Some of the big opportunities that I would see is just taking a look at some of the unmet medical needs that are being that are still out there. There are gaps in either healthcare or in life science opportunities that are not being addressed. There certainly seems to be a big push towards rare disorders and ways of treating them in a cost-effective manner. I still see a great deal of push on technology and innovation in some specific disease areas or therapeutic areas, in particular in neurology and dementia. Those are very, very big areas, at least in the United States, and I would say even globally. There's just a big push for looking at ways of treating Alzheimer's disease, for example. And then another big area where I'm seeing a great deal of technology, innovation, investment is in areas trying to treat pain, for example, in particular opioid and opioid abuse. Those are some really big areas that I'm seeing a great deal of investment and some really innovative thinking by some entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Michael, we'd of course love to hear from you. And then Stephen, we'd love to hear from you. So please go ahead, Michael.
Yes, I think one of the areas, well, two areas. But the first I'd like to mention is being able to do a much better job of interfacing the academic world and these tech transfer offices I mentioned earlier with the entrepreneurial and investor world, particularly the venture world, because there's so much great technology that could become highly innovative that's already had the research and R&D done sitting in these tech transfer offices, which I think have huge potential in vast variety of areas that can easily be vetted. And we're seeing this growth in these academic institutions. It's slow to come, but if you look at MIT and you look at Stanford and some of the other universities as such that have great programs of entrepreneurship that are connected with the medical and engineering colleges, we're really seeing some of the most innovative companies, say such as Moderna Therapeutics, such as the gene editing company Editas, and on and on and on, right? I also think that we'll see a lot of innovation in the areas of healthcare delivery to rural and remote areas, which I just recently participated in an event at Jackson Hole that I helped co-chair, which is particularly focused on this area of delivering innovative, inexpensive or cost-effective healthcare to remote and rural areas. And remote is not necessarily the same as rural. And being able to come up with cost-effective means for delivery, whether it's such as drone and autonomous systems, drone technologies and autonomous systems, say for delivery of blood and or other needed supplies to these areas, which is an ongoing test bed in Uganda for a drone company of blood delivery, or whether it be integrated healthcare technologies such as using Fitbit. I think there's a lot of potential application innovation there in these areas.
Thank you, Michael. Stephen, we'd love to hear your insights. Please go ahead, and then we'd love to hear from Andre.
I'm going to build upon the last comment. I think knowledge transfer from the universities into industry, there's a lot going on. I think we could all do a lot better. But I'll move beyond that to say that there's also industry to industry, and the use of common standards, common databases, even, heaven forbid, sharing of data and insights at an industry level in order to collaborate and open doors which otherwise wouldn't exist for single investments. And I can't think of a good example for the moment, but certainly in other spheres, at the point that information and technology was shared, the doors opened a lot faster. And intuitively, I think that's a route that this whole genre needs to go down, which is more in the way of information sharing across all parties.
Thank you, Stephen. Andre, let's hear from you.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, there were a lot of great comments from the other panelists, and I just wanted to add a few more things. Indeed, I don't think that actually we are short of, having great technology, having great innovation around the globe. Actually, I think one of the biggest challenges is sometimes actually how to unlock the IP, because sometimes it may be developed, inside a very institutionalized, university or research facility by, maybe researcher or professor. So then the biggest challenge is how to commercialize it or how to unlock the IP, especially maybe if it goes cross-border into a different market. So we have seen a lot of I talk to a lot of great companies on a daily basis from the US, from Israel, and they may have a great hardware, let's say, for example, wearable, which, tracks your data. It can, gives you certain data points, which is sort of interesting for the consumer, for a couple of days, you buy a new wearable, you wear it, you see how many steps you have done. But then what comes next? So a lot of things then usually don't go to the next stage where they may lack actually content or services in order to enhance the consumer experience. So a lot of those engineers or entrepreneurs, they may tackle a problem from an engineering point of view or design point of view, but they may not really think about how to engage with the consumers. And if we look at those groups that we are dealing with, a lot of those people are actually at home, which means they're actually no longer patients, they're actually consumers. And the consumer's psychology is very different to the patient psychology in the hospital, where a doctor will tell you what you need to do. So that is where there needs to be a sort of a framework. If you have hardware, where you can add maybe software or services, a back end to it. If you have software, then you may add a hardware to it. So it's really about, how to build an extensive ecosystem.
Thank you, Andre. Moving on to our next question. We're going to pose this one to Ashwin, David, Michael. We'd love to hear from you too, and then Christian will summarize for our community. It's an investment-related question. Here goes. Ashwin, what investment capital trends are you seeing, and what is the current investing climate? Is it cautious, neutral, buoyant when it comes to the healthcare startups around the world? Please go for it.
So if I can go back the last 7 to 10 years, I think a whole lot of investment has really gone into two broad areas, which has been in healthcare, which has been pharma, as well as in laying out plumbing or the infrastructure, hospital chains, large dental chains, so on and so forth. And then there's been a shift to healthcare IT. So startups which have been building information management systems and so on and so forth. I think the next wave of investment, which has already perhaps begun, is really in the devices space or in deep tech plays in healthcare. And we are seeing a lot of early investment trends in the artificial intelligence space, as well as diagnostics, etc., using AI. What I think is happening is really that these are early bets. There's no significant capital that has gone in. It's just a lot of smaller, earlier bets which have been spread across, and people are trying to see where this is going to go. And to answer the second part of your question, which is really cautious versus buoyant, I think it's a mix of both. There is a certain amount of buoyancy in the number of startups that are getting invested in new areas like AI or even new age devices, if I can call them that. But where there is caution is that the amount of capital that are going into these new segments are still small, are still early, and we've growth stage investors coming in a big way to provide larger amounts of capital in these new areas.
Yeah, so my viewpoint on investment capital trends, and I'll break it down by both financial sponsors and strategic companies, as well as private investments and public investments. Where I'm seeing, at least on the private capital side, whether it's with private equity or venture capital, I would classify it or characterize it as I'm still seeing very, very bullish activity out there. Private equity and VCs have a pretty good size fund, and their limited partners or their LPs are asking them to make good investments, good quality investments. So there's what I'm seeing is there's a big push to utilize the money that's been raised in the fund to make good investments, either as a bolt-on to their current portfolio or going deeper on a particular investment. So very, very bullish. And then on the public side, public capital markets, we are starting to see a little bit of an uptick on the I side, companies wanting to file an S1 or find a shell to do some reverse merger. So we are seeing some increased activity there. And it's where I'm seeing it across the board. It's not one particular sector or therapeutic area in pharma, biotech, or medtech, or even on the wearables in the health tech space. But what I'm seeing is just increased shots on goal where they want to utilize the funds that they've raised and make those investments. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Michael, I know you had some insights you wanted to share here. Please go for it.
Yes, in terms of the capital investments, I actually just read recently, or a couple of weeks ago, an article from PitchBook where I believe they said this last quarter or last several quarters have been some of the highest in investment in terms of venture capital in the life sciences, biotech areas. With IT, healthcare IT also being quite heavily invested in since the 2008 market crash. which I think is a great sign. I think this is also, a geographic question as well. I think we see significant differences in how investing is done, particularly early stage venture investing, that is seed and Series A type investing, and the types of companies, and even the way that the companies go and pitch to investors are very different, even from the East Coast versus West Coast, as I've seen. I think additionally, what we're also starting to see over the past couple of years is a diversity of investments, where it's not just venture, and it's not just private equity, but we're also seeing some of these larger private equity firms starting to get involved in earlier stage life science companies, as well as even hedge funds, and also more funding coming from family offices for early stage life science investing, which I think is a really interesting area, something that I've been able to be involved with here recently, that I think has a great deal of potential for funding new innovative investments.
Thank you, Michael. And Christian, I know you've got some ideas you'd like to summarize for our community. Just what's been said, please go ahead.
Certainly. As far as opportunities for entrepreneurs, the panelists talked about how in the developed world, companies are developing new therapies for diseases of aging, pain management, and even treating cancer. In the developing world, a lot of what we're seeing is bringing basic resources such as blood testing and diagnostics to prevent debilitating diseases to the emerging markets. And there's a huge problem of access in terms of capitalizing on these technologies for patients. And what we'll see in the developed world is healthcare will increasingly become part of daily life, as we're already seeing. And we'll use technologies such as phones, text, drones for moving materials, and new disposable diagnostic devices for increasing access in the developing world. Panelists talked about how, given these opportunities, we still need to do work to commercialize the great research that's being done in academic institutions. And it is a different thing to build a business than to make a discovery. And as far as capital is an important part of realizing the potential of all these technologies through business. We are seeing an increase and an uptick in investing at the earliest stages in health technology companies, but there still is a lack of investment along the entire path that will take a company from a seed stage company, which is the earliest company, to a very large public company. And there's a gap between seed stage investing and the next round of investing, Series A. Thank you.
Starting with you, Stephen, are you seeing sufficient support for health startups in the UK and in Europe generally? And then, of course, we'd love to hear from David and Ashwin. Please go ahead, Stephen.
I don't know how to answer that question. What is sufficient? Certainly, there are a lot of people seeking funding, and there are various funds, both venture capital and private equity, which are supporting a selected few. My gut would tell me that the investments are probably going into those areas which promise the good returns in the shortest possible time. So it's not true R&D, it's more on the lines of moving from proven concept into commercialization is where the funding is going. Beyond that, is there enough? I don't think I can answer that.
Thank you, Stephen. Let's hear from David, your thoughts on that topic. Please go for it.
Yeah, I guess my viewpoint would be, or sort of tailor your question, sufficient support. You had mentioned about in the UK and Europe. I would, channel it over to North America or to the US. I think we're seeing, and he brings up a great point. What is sufficient? I think there's strong support there. There always could be better, level of support, which would lead to sufficient or robustness. You have the strategic companies who I think are looking to fill pipelines and make some strategic investments in early stage technologies, or even companies that have maybe some clinical data, because they need to either hit Wall Street expectations or fill gaps in their pipeline to meet expectations of their shareholders. And then I think we're seeing just more robust activity there and earlier shots on goal. Just look at the immune oncology space as an example. On the financial side, I think there's some decent support there, could be better, as referenced in a previous question. You know, you got institutional level venture capitalists. Those tend to be investors of 100 million or more by definition. You have this new phenomenon, family offices wanting to get involved in the game, and that's an emerging area that's coming out, which I'm very excited about, but they tend to be less sophisticated than your usual life science investor. So I think there is some good support. It could always be better. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Ashwin, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this question. Please go ahead.
Sure, let me answer this question in the context of India and perhaps South Asia. And when we talk about support, I think there's support that could come from three different segments of, let's say, institutions or society, right? The first being the investment community. And while I believe, as someone else pointed out, that at the seed and early stages, there's a fair amount of support for startups, the amount of growth capital that is available is still short of the number of startups or the amount of capital that is actually required. The second set of people who I think are important is government. And I think while the government is doing a significant amount to help startups here, where they can add a lot of value is in helping startups and their offerings actually access markets or consumers who are in remote areas, who are away from urban population and who are in the rural areas. And I believe the government has a big role to play in supporting startups access them. The third piece, I think, is the consumer community from the enterprise side, which in the case of healthcare startups, customers are often hospitals and doctors. And where I feel there can be more support forthcoming from them is their ability to actually work closely with startups or to be able to absorb the offerings that startups provide in a better fashion, reduce sales cycles, to be able to move as nimbly or as quickly as startups, or to work with them in co-developing products. So I think there's some ways to go in terms of the enterprise customers here who are really the hospitals.
Thank you, Ashwin. Moving on to our next question, and we're going to be posing this to Michael and Andre, but of course we'd love to hear from our other panelists too, so please feel free to share your insights here. Michael, what would your advice be to scientists and researchers who'd like to form a startup and commercialize their work? Please go ahead.
Man, wow, I could probably spend an hour talking simply about this. Actually, I just recently did at Mayo Clinic last Friday. This is something that really gets me excited, but I think there's a number of different things. It's multifaceted. There needs to be incentivization by the university administration for scientists and researchers at these institutions, whether they're universities or nonprofit research institutions, to pursue entrepreneurship, to commercialize their ideas, especially as, say, a biomedical engineer or life scientist. Your ultimate goal should be at least to help patients. And the idea here is then to the only way to do that is through private capital and commercialization of whatever your technologies are. And I think instilling entrepreneurial ideas, even at the very basic research level from the very beginning, and within the research lab itself, I think actually is one way that could really be done quite well and help improve and increase the pace at which we would see entrepreneurs and ideas and technologies actually being translated out of the universities and research institutions into the real world and commercialized to have a positive economic impact while also improving patient outcomes.
Thank you, Michael. Andre, unfortunately, we are running out of time, but we'd love your thoughts on this. Please go ahead. What would your advice be to scientists and researchers?
Sure. David already mentioned a few great things. Michael. To add on a few more things, of course, there's the support side, which needs to be there from the institution or the government funding and so forth. But I think maybe even as important is probably to put the researchers or scientists in the right environment where they can actually thrive. And again, look at, not only trying to solve problems, but then how can this actually translate into a real product? And how can this be, how can the IP be unlocked? So that's where actually there needs to be a framework where, the right environment in terms of, entrepreneurs, maybe investment bankers, doctors, consumers needs to be involved from a very, very early stage in order to, create a great product. Because I think we are not only in a co-sharing economy where, we get to share all types of, cars, homes, and so forth. But I think also we are, embarking onto a co-thinking economy where it's about, sharing ideas, sharing business models, sharing resources, and so forth in order to be successful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andre. Moving on to our favorite part of the session, we ask each of our VIPs what excites you in 2018 and what industries do you believe are ripe for disruption. So we'd love to know what excites you. We're going to run through our panel, starting with Ashwin, then we'll go David. Ashwin, please go for it. Let's hear what excites you in 2018.
I think there's a lot of disruption going to take place in the entire healthcare space. And I sort of touched upon this before. For more people in the healthcare industry are really going to try and identify ways by which they can deliver healthcare services at home. And this is going to happen even with hospitals who are going to try to figure out how they can get into patients' homes and deliver services there.
Thank you, Ashwin. David, what excites you in 2018?
I'm excited about healthcare and life science in 2018. I'm excited about it now. You're always going to need healthcare. People are always going to be getting sick. You're always going to need innovation. Not everything can be a generic. So healthcare and life science to me is counter-cyclical to other industries where it might go through the ups and downs based on macroeconomic trends. But I'm very, very excited across the board for this area.
Thank you, David. Andre, what excites you in 2018?
Well, I'm actually very confident that we are sort of, going to see a new medical civilization very soon. Talking about, new digital epidemiology, where hospital data, home harvested biodata, as well as genomic data converges in order to create actually a sustainable and predictable healthcare model, which can be accessible from the home. So yeah, pretty much excited about that.
Thank you, Andre. Stephen?
I'm going to come in for a far more specific angle. I see battlefield technologies in the healthcare side leaping forward over the next year or two. And what the US and the UK, Germany invest in for battlefield technologies ends up in the hospitals and local medical practices very quickly afterwards. And there's some very exciting stuff being done on trauma repair at the point of injury, and it's very, very exciting. And I think once that hits the high streets and is available for everybody, it will revolutionize the accident and emergency departments of most hospitals.
Thank you, Stephen. Michael, what excites you in 2018?
2018, I think from a general standpoint, yeah, I agree with some of the previous comments. Data integration, I think is going to be huge. I think personalized medicine, we're going to actually start to see becoming a more of a realization, a continued realization, particularly in immuno-oncology. I'm extremely excited about CAR T therapies, particularly with Novartis, is a new therapy being approved, and kite therapy is right on the heels of them. I think that's an extremely exciting area that we're going to see in 2018 become very popular and showing some extraordinary results. And then also in Alzheimer's, I'm really excited to see what 2018 brings in terms of this chase for a cure or treatment, I should say, for Alzheimer's, as we've seen so many phase 3 failures here over the past year or two that have been just tremendous failures, but with a disease that is growing in size and that is so prevalent and problematic in our aging population, as we talked about. I think that we're really gonna, I hope to see a treatment that is efficacious come in 2018.
Thank you, Michael. And while we ask our VIPs to prep their tweet piece of advice, Christian, what excites you in 2018?
I'm really excited about the use of data to replace more expensive diagnostic techniques and increase access. And I'm very excited about gene therapies for treating cancers and rare diseases. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Before we ask our VIPs for their tweet piece of advice that we can all go and apply, thank you to everyone for a truly amazing session. And thank you to our VIPs again for joining us. We really enjoyed hosting you. Just before it's too late, on November 1st, we're hosting a session on smart cities and transportation. What does the future hold? And then November 8th, a very popular one, future of cryptocurrencies. What will the next 20 years look like? Now we're going to ask our VIPs to share their tweet piece of advice, starting with Ashwin. Ashwin, please go ahead.
Okay, I've got to keep this brief. Prepare for a world where the patient becomes the true center of the healthcare universe.
Thank you. David?
Invest in healthcare 2018.
Love it. Stephen, piece of advice.
Think healthcare. Think now.
Thank you. Michael, your tweet piece of advice.
Hashtag academic entrepreneurs 2018.
I love that one. Christian, what's your tweet piece of advice?
Commercial businesses are a great way to bring healthcare to the market.
Thank you, Christian. And Andre, what's your tweet piece of advice?
Co-thinking economy in healthcare 2017.
Thank you, Andre. Just remember, to all our community members, remember to keep us up to date in all your progress. We love hearing from you. You can find us at Inspire Me at onlinefiresidechat.com. You can also find me as well as our VIPs and champions on LinkedIn. And we love hearing that you're succeeding. If you enjoyed our session today, remember to keep sharing the invitations because we're trying to reach our 100-country goal. And with all your help, we know we can get it. My tweet piece of advice is remember to be grateful for all that you have. It's a privilege to be building your dreams and to be learning from such extraordinary business leaders. We are very, very lucky, and we are very lucky to be supported in building our dreams. Thank you to everyone for a very, very, very special session. On the count of 3, I'm going to ask our VIPs to shout bye. So thank you again to everyone. We're going to see you next week, Wednesday. 1, 2, 3. Bye, guys.
Bye.
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 Thanks, everybody.